Today I'm going to show you how to successfully roll 35mm film onto a stainless steel development reel so you can develop it in a stainless steel tank. I'm James Fisher, and this is Vintage Insight Photography. And on this channel, we do a lot of film photography and show you some techniques that may have been lost in the past, giving you some vintage insight. I greatly prefer the stainless steel reels for film development. They're much more sturdy. They are much more precision made. They work when they're wet also. The typical Patterson style or plastic reels, you usually have to shuttle the film on. It loads from the outside, and if there's any moisture at all in there, then the film tends to stick along the inside. And you can say, well, I'm keeping my reel very dry, but usually you're using some type of a changing bag to put the film on the reel. And if you're like me, if it's in the summer, then you start to sweat a little bit in that bag. It's kind of hot, and that moisture in there is just enough to make that film emulsion stick in that plastic and very hard to insert. So today I'm going to show you how to successfully load 35mm film onto a stainless steel reel. Now, there's a few things that you're going to need to be successful in doing this. Obviously, you're going to need some exposed film. You're going to need a stainless steel reel and the development tank to go with it. You're going to need a way to open up the film. One of the ways I recommend is a simple bottle opener or a church key type bottle opener. And you're probably going to need a pair of scissors as well. I also recommend a changing bag to make it easier to load that film in there. These are totally light tight, and I'll show you how these work because all of this has to be done in total darkness. So this is one of those things you're going to have to practice a lot so that you can confidently do this without seeing what you're doing, either because you're in a totally dark room or everything is happening inside the changing bag. But first, let's simulate an exposed roll of film. When 35mm film is exposed, you wind it back into the canister, and this leader tail is going to go away and go totally into that canister. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now with this. And so this is what it would be like right there. We're going to have to open this reel up. And so the easiest way to do it is with some type of can opener, and this is where you've got to be in total darkness. If this film can be exposed with just that tiny bit of light in the really fast shutter speeds or small lens openings, it doesn't take much light at all to expose this. And another thing let me tell you is that even though there's felt along this edge, let me show you a little closer this way, felt along this edge right here, light can still sneak in there. And especially with fast films, with films over like a 200 ISO. And so you can end up with those little light streaks on there. So again, this is going to happen in total darkness. You can use an opener like this to open it up, or if you feel like just brute strength, you can actually just tear this open right from there. But let's use the opener because it's going to be much nicer to do that. If I can get this in there. Like that, and it starts to work that up. And again, in total darkness, we are then going to be removing the spool of film. So once we have this out, we can then cut off this leader because it's going to be in the way. So we're going to cut that right along there. So we have a straight line. Then we use our stainless steel reel, and you see there's this little clip right here. Hopefully that shows up on the other camera, a little clip right here, and the film is going to slide right in there and be pinched and held right by that. And of course the film is going to rest inside these little grooves, so it's a little bit wider than what's going on. So we have to kind of curl it a little bit to get in there. Get it in nice and straight and push the film right up into there and make sure that we're centered. And again, you're doing this all by feel in total darkness. So once we get that centered, then we simply are going to curl the film a little bit like this. Lay this down and we can start to roll our film up along in that roll. And once it gets started, it's a pretty easy process to keep that going. And again, you're going to want to practice this technique over and over and over, because you're going to be doing this in total darkness, totally by feel. So again, this film is just going to roll right up onto there very easily. Just like this. Now, if you have a shorter, like a 12 or 24 exposure film, we would have already reached the end. But we don't. This is a little longer. This is 36 exposure, so it's going to pretty much fill up this reel. And we're going to keep going until we can't go anymore, because we're going to feel the end of the spool and there's where the film is taped onto the end. So we can feel that. Then again, we're going to take our scissors and we're going to cut that off. And make sure that snaps in just like that. Now our film is totally rolled onto this spool. The spool then drops into the tank. We put the lid on the tank. And now we're totally light tight in there. So we can now lift up the lid. We can put our chemistry in, whatever we need to do to process our film. So now that we've done that once, let's try that again inside the changing bag. And whoop, there's a SD card holder right there. Changing bag, some of this stuff out of the way so we can see this, is kind of like a shirt, sort of. You put your arms in here. There's elastic on this in the black fabric. Then there's other elastic in a little further. So your hands go into here. The whole thing is light tight. This one Velcros up. I'll put a link somewhere in the video where you can get this type of thing. Unfortunately, you're not going to be able to get this because they don't make these anymore. You're going to need to consult eBay or something like that to be able to find one of these stainless steel tanks. But everything is going to go inside this chamber right here. This is going to zip up and then Velcro over to provide a light, tight environment to do all of this work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put everything in here just like we were going to do this. So I'm going to have my tank, the lid in here. I'm going to need my church key, my can opener. I'm going to need my scissors in there. And we're going to need our film. So I'm just going to take this off of this reel so I have it to use in there. There we are, just like that. So our reel is going to go in here. Our film, and I'm going to put it inside this little canister to kind of simulate a little bit of what we have to do to make this work. Open that up. Put that right in there. And then we're going to zipper this closed, just like this. Velcro these down. I don't know, can you see all that on that camera? I think so. get this stuff out of the way. Now, I'm going to put my arms in through this. I should do my right hand first since I'm pretty profoundly right-handed. These are very tight and can maybe cut off your circulation. Not much fun. Let's get the other one in there. So now we're in the bag. We're totally light tight. So I can then pull the film out of that canister and roll it on that spool. But I think what we're going to do, just so you can kind of understand how this works, I'm going to try to set up a camera and a light inside this changing bag. I have one more roll of film. We'll open that up in the changing bag so you can see everything happen inside the bag. Alright, let's get our hands in there. I've got my camera set up in there. Okay, so there's that. There's the camera. So I can push the camera a little way in there. And we'll see what that actually sees in there. So I've got, there's the lid, there's a tank. I'm just going to set that on there for now. There's our spool right there. Scissors. Looking for my roll of film. Oh. It's in there. Okay, let's make sure it says aimed. Kind of there, a little light. There's our film right there. So I've got the film. There's my opener. I can feel the flat side of the film, so I know that's where it has to be. Get the right side of the opener there. So then we're going to open this up. Right there. Take the film out. Now, I'm going to show you an alternate way to do this as well. So what we can do, all right, so now we're ready to cut off the end of this. Well, I tell you what, let me show you a different way to do this. I'm going to go ahead and roll the film the whole way into my hand like this and off that spool. Hopefully you can see this in there. This is actually the technique that I always did when I had a darkroom. The whole roll, then you kind of know when it ends, and you aren't surprised when you hit the end where it's taped onto the spool. All the way right there to the spool. Then I can grab my scissors and I can cut it off right there. That spot. Now I'm going to use the straight side and roll it on there. So there's my spool. I need to find where my opening is, and it's right here. I can feel it. You see that? It's right there. So now I simply snap that film into that spool right there. Make sure we're square. I can tell I'm too far to the one side. I can feel it because it doesn't want to line up right. Now it's in there. Now we simply start rolling this in. So the film goes right on that spool. And you can feel it when you're crooked at all. So we'll just continue to roll that spool in there. There we go. So they used to not use plastic tape to affix the 35mm film onto that spool. It was more like a paper tape, kind of like a masking tape, a black masking tape, and it would tear. So then, doing it this way, I could do the whole thing without scissors and almost without tools. I would simply tear the canister open and then go to the end of the roll where the spool is and start loading the film up. Then I wouldn't even have to cut the leader end off because it just fits right in there. So you have to unroll a little bit. If you get yourself a little bit crooked as it goes through, then you have to kind of roll it back just a little bit. You just keep that little bit of arc. Hopefully that's showing up in there. Right in there, back and forth, back and forth. Just keep it going, keep rolling in there. It's like that, we've almost got it, almost to the end. And if you end up with a whole bunch of film left over and you're full on that spool, you know you did something wrong. Oh, I can feel a little wrinkle right there. So I'm going to back her back up. Here we are. Again, just keep rolling that in. Now we're crooked. Then it's simply going to drop into the canister. Just right here. Put the lid on. Now we can get our arms out and we're ready to process that film. Now I'm curious to see how good of a job I did. Let's get in here and see what's happened. Open this up. And of course you have to remember, after you're done, take all the stuff out of the changing bag. You don't need that in there. Let's see how we did. I actually have a wrinkle in there. So I think Jim needs to practice more. We got where it got a little right there is where it went off the rails, right there. Literally off the rails. Look at that. Oh, awful. Awful, awful, awful. You should have told me. You should have told me I was doing that bad. But this is why you need to practice. So we're going to be doing this a whole bunch more times until we can get this absolutely perfect. Well, I decided to leave that failure in there so you can see that practice is often needed. We're going to be doing some 35mm black and white photography and development in the very near future, so I've got to get my technique down. Meanwhile, I'm going to keep practicing over and over with this, with my eyes shut a bunch of times and more times in that changing bag till I get this down perfect. So when we're together next time, we're going to have some nice developed film. I'm James Fisher. This is Vintage Insight Photography. Thanks for joining me today.